I'm sitting with Andrew Rattray, Managing Director, Fugitives Drift. Hi, Andrew.
Hi Nick, how are you?
Well, thank you. How long has the farm been in your family for?
This property's been in our family since the mid to late 60s. So what's that, 50 years now?
And when did you actually stop farming it? And when did your father actually started the historical tours?
Well, it never was really a farm. It was more of a sort of holiday destination my grandparents had. They used to come out here into the bush and just enjoy it for what it was. They never actually farmed it properly. It was only a cattle farm prior to that. But my parents arrived here in 1989 and started essentially what is today Fugitives Drift.
Was that your father's plan all the time, to start doing historical tours, or did that just something happen naturally?
It was. He always felt that there was a story to be told here and that people would want to hear it. But it took a couple of things in his life to make him want to do this full time and do it properly.
Obviously, your father put this place on the map internationally, from being a forgotten part of Zululand. Now people from many places all over the world come here. How do you see Fugitives Drift in the future?
Look, I think what we're finding now, particularly in the last few years, is that the average age of our travellers is getting younger and younger, which is hugely positive. Which means we're not catering to necessarily just an older clientele, and there's so much more than just the battlefields out here. Look, Zululand and Drift will always be our core focus, and because they are just these most incredible stories that people all over the world we think should hear, because they're not just stories about history and numbers and facts and figures and all those sorts of things that tend to make history quite boring and quite dry. They're really stories of people, and people can empathize with these men involved in these extraordinary situations and see how they come out of it and what happened in the rest of their lives afterwards. And they're incredibly moving and incredibly powerful stories that, if you're interested in human beings, should interest people. But again, aside from just the history in the area, the incredible beauty of this part of South Africa, and we're in a 2,000 hectare or 5,000 acre game reserve. That's got a good amount of wildlife. It's almost teeming with wildlife, with things like giraffe and zebras and wildebeest and kudu and nyala and so on.
When did you actually start to restock this area with game?
My father started here in the early 90s. There was already some game here, but it had been pretty much poached out for that's been happening for a very long time. And he started to reintroduce the game and only species that were historically found here in the early 90s.
Which are what?
Oh, things like giraffe, zebras, blue wildebeest, kudu, nyala, impala, blesbuck. We've got some red hartebeest as well, and then of course there are things like mountain reedbuck and duiker, and then there are quite a lot of small predators as well, things like jackals and caracals, and there are the odd leopard around. We just don't see them very often, but you see signs of them. So it's maturing into a wildlife paradise in a lot of ways.
I had a very nice outride this morning with some spectacular views. Obviously riding is one of the activities. What else do you offer here for guests, particularly younger guests who perhaps want to be more active?
Well, one of the things that we've started doing in the last 2 years is mountain biking, which is, I think personally, I'm a pretty keen mountain biker, is the best way to see the bush, because you move at a fairly high speed and you're very, very quiet. And so we've got a network of trails around the property, and they afford people the opportunity to get up close and personal with animals, and they're all pretty relaxed with people riding around. So that's a wonderful thing, and as you may have noticed, there's nothing flat here, so it certainly does get the heart going quite a lot, which is good.
So I came across some impala this morning, and they were almost they were very sluggish in getting out of the way, which obviously means that they're very comfortable, they're very comfortable with the environment, they're not afraid at all.
Yeah, look, it's something that's taken a long time to not necessarily habituate them, but just to know that humans aren't a huge threat to them. You know, particularly with vehicles, and on horseback you can get really, really close to them. Look, on foot, they're still, that human shape is still, obviously it's ingrained in these animals that they should be afraid of human beings, so they don't let you get too close, but they'll get you close enough to get a really good view of them, which is what's important.
Changing tack slightly, speak to me about your father's foundation.
Look, the David Rattray Foundation was something that we set up in the weeks after he died. We already had a charitable arm at the time, but it was two separate charities, one that dealt with people living on this side of the river, so around Fugitives Drift, and then another one that dealt with around Zululand. And we put them together and changed our focus slightly to focus pretty much primarily on education, because we feel that education is the key to all the problems that almost any country in the world faces, and South Africa is one of them. If you equip people with the tools to climb out of the poverty trap, they'll climb out themselves and are unlikely to fall back into that same trap again. So we support 17 schools in the area surrounding us, and now that it's been in operation as the David Rattray Foundation for 6 years, which is just over a full high school term essentially of children arriving at sort of 13 and graduating at 18, we can see a huge rise in the pass rate, and I think that's testament to what the foundation is doing.
What do these people do after they matriculate?
Look, it's a huge problem as well, because a lot of the time the parents haven't got the means to send them on to university, but we try and help them get bursaries and scholarships and things like that. But even it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to go to university once they've matriculated, but they've at least got that knowledge and that base to be able to find some sort of reasonable employment that'll afford them better than minimum wage. And if that starts small, things will certainly things are looking up for the future.
Down in the valley here, obviously apart from yourselves there are a few lodges. Is tourism the major employer here in the area?
Yes, it is. Tourism is by far the biggest. I mean, we as Fugitives Drift employ just over 50 people, and we try and employ people from the local area only, in order to try and uplift everyone around here. Look, we'd like to employ a lot more, but that's not always feasible. But tourism is certainly a huge role player in the area, because there's a knock-on effect from that. But a lot of the men do work in the cities.
Looking at your crystal ball, in 20 years' time, how do you see Fugitives? What has it become? I
don't want to change too much here at Fugitives Drift in terms of size and things like that, because it's a very intimate setting, and we get to know everyone, and it's a very personal experience, and getting any bigger certainly would take away from that. What I would like to see though is people viewing this area as a destination in itself, and it's not just about the history, that there is so much more to it, and so, you know, not necessarily just getting English-speaking guests, because we get people from all over the English-speaking world coming out here. I would quite like to see people from continental Europe coming out here just to enjoy the bush, and being able to walk around in what is essentially a very, very wild area without the fear of getting eaten or squashed by some big and scary animal.
Andrew, that was very interesting. Thank you for your time, and thank you for speaking with Uyaphi.com.
It's an absolute pleasure.